right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's week number 2. It's a loaded weekend. We're building off of an impressive week number 1, and I'm joined by the most impressive co-host that there is out there in college football. My co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Haps, you are too kind. I'm doing great. Week one was fantastic. Across the board, ending with a bang with Duke taking Clemson to the woodshed. But you got to close the book on week one and move to week two. If you forget about, if you live in the past, you're going to end up losing ball games. You got to focus and move forward, and that's what we're doing here today.
Nothing was more joyous than us getting a chance to watch Clemson lose to Duke, and that was just icing on the cake of week number 1. But hey, before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we release a new video. We got a bunch of them coming out there for you. That's all I'm going to say. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers by mid-October. Who knows what's going to happen then? So, Fresh, let's dive right into it this week, into a slate of games here. First place we're going to is, you don't see this very often, but the SEC is playing a away game at Tulane. Not too far. They're still in the Southeast. Ole Miss is traveling to play Tulane. Currently, at the time of record, Ole Miss is a 7.5-point road favorite. Over-under is set at 65 points. That's a lot of points given there. Fresh, I'll hand it off to you. What are we going to see with Ole Miss?
This is the 64th all-time meeting between these two schools. Obviously, Tulane used to be in the SEC way back in the day. But it's the first time since 1956 that both these schools are actually meeting as ranked opponents. Yes, Ole Miss and Tulane are both ranked. Get that through your heads. It's true. It's fact. It's been going on. Just live it out. But outside of that nonsense, this is the best uniform matchup I think we're going to get all season. If Ole Miss can come out with the baby blues on with the white helmets, or even the baby blues with the navy blue helmets, and Tulane can come out with their green jerseys with the blue helmets. Just really just maximize the color on the field. I want to see it kind of like a similar to USC, UCLA when they both wear the home uniforms. Can we get both of those home uniforms for Tulane and Ole Miss in this football game? It would be great for TV. It would really be great just for anyone who loves the random colors that are on the field. I think that would be perfect to watch. But when you dive into the football game, the first thing that came to my mind is, can Cinderella strike again? Last year, Tulane had a magical run, went all the way, won the AAC, went to the Cotton Bowl, took down USC. Can they take down Ole Miss? Can they really supplant themselves as not just a AAC Cinderella power, but a college football national power? If they take down Ole Miss, a couple of games ago they beat USC, they're starting to stack on wins. Michael Pratt and that entire and squad are really starting to build confidence, and they can be challenging for another New Year's Six Bowl again this year and really be something serious to be taking, at a moment's notice that you're playing a very quality football team. So I'm very interested to see how this game's going to play out, and if they have a little extra magic left. Because like you said, this game is being played in New Orleans, not in Oxford, Mississippi. So they got the home field vibe. I got a feeling there's probably going to be a ton of Rebel fans making the trip to New Orleans, but you're going to have all those Tulane students ready to rock and roll, and all the fans that are in the Cotton Bowl are going to be packing that place and making it a little hostile, a little loud. That could bring us some good fortune on Saturday afternoon. We just found out Lane Train is totally confident in Jackson Dart. That's his quarterback, but if anything is problems, he does have Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard there. So he has a full bullpen, if you will, of quarterbacks in case there's trouble with Jackson Dart on the road. But Dart's his guy. He's wavered on him in the past. How much of a leash does he have? That's going to be something to keep following on, not just in this football game, but going forward when they have to play Ole Miss, when Ole Miss has to play LSU or Alabama, Auburn, A&M, etc., or Georgia down the road. How much of a leash does Jackson Dart have? And I think this is the first time we're really going to see. Does he actually get a little bit if he makes a mistake, or is it first mistake, first sign of trouble, you're yanking and going to the back of the quarterback? So we'll find that out in this football game. We didn't learn much from that Mercer beatdown. I don't think we're going to learn much at all. This game, you're going to find out really more about who Ole Miss is. Now, Tulane, they had themselves a pretty good matchup week one. They had a pretty good South Alabama team, the Jaguars there, and they won. They won convincingly, but that was a good test right off the bat. They didn't have a slow start like playing Mercer with Ole Miss did. So I think they feel better about who they are, and we're going to find out a little bit more who Ole Miss is in the football game. So that's something to keep an eye on, just personnel-wise, defense, offensive wise, defensive line play. I think they've had that first test. Ole Miss is going to get that first test this week. And are they up for the challenge to play on and take on Tulane? You mentioned that Ole Miss is favored by 7.5. Quayshawn Junkins, a bunch of other players on this offense. I think that they could cover that 7.5, and they'll cover it going away. They know the opportunities in front of them, and they have to set the tone. And they can't give away a football game, even though Tulane's a great football team. I think they're able to capture this and cover that 7.5 on the road. The one thing I really also looked at was that over under. You said it was as high at 65. Ole Miss has allowed at least 24 points in each of their last 4 games of 2022. So I'm not including the Mercer game, but that defense, they can give up some points. You can't assume by watching them that they've solved the defensive issues in that game versus Mercer. I got a feeling there's still a little leak out the back end. They get in a shootout, that's going to generate some points for Tulane. Tulane has scored at least 27 in the last 4 games, and 4 of those games have scored at least 37. So I'm just saying, based on those alone, I'm saying hammer the over. They're going to put up points on Saturday afternoon. We're going to see maybe like a 45-42, 41-38 ball game at the low end, but I really think it's going to be more of a 41-30 football game. Ole Miss is going to cover that spread and win going away.
Yeah, Fresh. I got this as a huge game for Quayshawn Judkins here for Ole Miss. They didn't really need him last week versus Mercer. He wasn't that bell cow running back that we think he is. He's probably one of the best running backs, individually talented running backs in the entire NCAA. Jackson Dart took hold of the quarterback position with his 334 yards and 4 touchdowns. He looked really good in that game. Again, versus Mercer, nothing bad about Mercer on that. They're a respectable program in their level. But, this is going to be the game that everyone's going to point the saying this is where where Ole Miss kind of jumped off there. The reason why I'm saying that this is a big game for Ole Miss is because they are going to be the type of team that does not let Tulane sneak up on them. They saw what Tulane did week 1 versus South Alabama. They also saw what Tulane did to USC. I know that was a lifetime ago, it's last December, but it's interesting to see how these teams, while they pull off a miracle upset like they did, kind of similar to App State, the next year, the tape's out on them. They know they can't do that. Ole Miss will take this game very, very seriously. As for Tulane, though, Michael Pratt, amazing game. Only 1 incompletion, 4 touchdowns, 294 yards in only 14 completions there. So he went 14 for 15 in their game. Very efficient game. Tulane forced 5 turnovers. If they want a chance in this game, they have to turn the ball over. Ole Miss also 7 penalties against Mercer. That concerned me a little bit because, again, when we were talking about, the level of talent here that you're playing in week 1, when you're increasing the level of talent, you can't make those dumb mistakes. You can't shoot yourself in the foot. 7 penalties, yeah, that may not be the end of the world to you, but that's going to be enough opportunity to keep Tulane in the ball game. And again, you're sitting there saying, Fresh, at that 7.5 point, you kind of think that they're going to run away with this. I think this is Ole Miss's chance to make a statement in this game. And as weird as it sounds, like you have a big win over Tulane, Tulane is going to dominate a good chunk of the rest of their schedule. This is probably going to be a 9 or 10 win football team when the season's all over and done with. If Tulane wants to do this, they need to kind of use the same game plan that they used in week 1. In week 1, they only faced 8 third down situations against Southern Alabama. They got to do the same thing. They got to stay ahead of the sticks on 1st and 2nd down. You don't want to face yourself into 3rd and long. Let Ole Miss to kind of pin their ears back and go after Pratt in this game. I need to see more of their running back. They've lost Spears, so they need to run the football, control the clock. They controlled the clock last week. I need to see this a little bit more. Okay, they had 38 carries last week, 142 yards. I need to see that number in the 40s this week. Okay, they're going to need to be averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry to have a chance against Ole Miss. I'm with you, Fresh. I think Ole Miss is going to win this. I think this number could get as close to 10.5, 11. Start creeping. Don't be shocked if this started creeping. And I don't think Vegas would move the line that much, but start creeping to that 2 touchdown game. I feel pretty good about that part. I think Ole Miss is going to win this going away. I don't know if Ole Miss is going to let up that many points to Tulane. I like Tulane a lot, and there's no disrespect on them, but I think that they're going to be highly motivated to pitch the shutout. I could see anything from like a 49-7 game or 49-14. I could see a big blowout. I could also see a 35-24 game on this. I still feel like that 10.5 is right where the sweet spot is in this game. But yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to win this big.
I think the biggest thing you're going to see from this football game that Lane wants to see is that can my defense stop somebody and do it consistently against a pretty good offense? Because if they can, that's going to help be a more of a balanced football team because they're going to need that defense to step up throughout the season. If that defense is leaky, they're in trouble all year.
Right. All right, Fresh, let's go to our second game of the weekend. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they're 2-0, but they really haven't played anybody low-ranked competition. They're traveling to Raleigh, North Carolina to face on the Wolfpack. NC State, they won their game. They're 1-0. Right now, Notre Dame is also a 7.5-point road favorite. Over-under is set at 51.5. Sam Hartman's been just as good as advertised, completing 83% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But if the Wolfpack can do one thing, Fresh, we know that they can play some defense. Where are you seeing with Notre Dame versus NC State?
Well, first off, you mentioned it. Sam Hartman's back in ACC country. He is 1-2 as a starter versus NC State, and both those losses coming in Carter Finley Stadium. So this is a kind of a house of horrors for him. He has not won there. Maybe it's a chance for him to reverse the curse, if you will, and get the W. But it's really going to come down to him and this entire team maintaining their focus they had in the first 2 games of the season. They went out and they've dominated up to this point. They have obliterated both their opponents. Can they match that for this football game? They're going on the road to a true, I'm going to say, hostile environment. It's going to be a noon kick early, eggs and kegs. Can they get focused and be ready to play a pretty solid NC State football team right off the bat? This is not Navy. This is not Tennessee State, not Tennessee Tech, not Middle Tennessee State, not Western Illinois, not whoever. They've got to show up against a quality football team and be able to match them and actually show us that they're truly legit. They've shown ever since that clunky start last year when they lost to Marshall and they lost to Stanford, the last few games, they've been tearing through people playing great football on both sides. But now here, it's 2023. We saw a lot of success early and they did a clunker. Can you keep the momentum going this year? I have noticed that with Hartman at quarterback and Coach Freeman, the leadership factor on this Notre Dame football team is a lot different than it was last year. They are determined to play from start to finish and execute at the best of their ability. They're not taking anything for chance. I've not seen a Notre Dame team level opponents like they have the past 2 weeks. And I'll look at the heart they put in the comeback for South Carolina bowl game. This team is different. They've changed from the Brian Kelly administration, and they have taken on the own identity of their own coach. They're playing a lot tougher, a lot more ruthless, for lack of a better term. And if they can keep that focus going at NC State, it's going to keep setting it up for a big run because 2 weeks after that, they get to host the Buckeyes. So you can go out here, lay a solid foundation, and keep building momentum for that Ohio State game, or you keep looking toward the Ohio State game and overlook NC State, and then you're in trouble. That's where Coach Freeman's got to keep, and Hartman's got to keep their team locked in and focused of, we've got to maintain in the moment, and we've got to play here. NC State kind of looked a little sluggish in their opener versus UConn. I was very worried, and it's kind of something I'm going to keep worrying about, was their lack of physicality at the offensive line. They had, I think, 9 or 10 plays within the 5-yard line, and they only scored on one of them. If you're playing UConn, Jim Moore, you've done a great job there. But NC State, your offensive line's got to be able to run that football and be able to take over that line of scrimmage and drive them off the ball. There's disruption all over the place. That's a problem right there because you're going to play better football teams in the ACC and you're going to play Notre Dame. They're going to eat you alive. So that was a very sluggish start. Armstrong didn't come out and connect the receivers in the flow that I thought they were going to have or they have in the past. So they didn't look like they were even ready to play UConn. Can they turn the switch and be ready for Notre Dame? Maybe they were looking ahead of Notre Dame. Maybe they don't want to show anything. But they've got to be able to come out from the very first snap and play efficient football and put points on the board. If not, they're going to get in a shootout. And I don't know if they can hang they've got to play at their own pace, and they've got to be able to dictate and be the aggressor against Notre Dame, not be taken to the woodshed, or it could get real ugly pretty early. I have no doubt in my mind Notre Dame will cover the 7.5. No doubt in my mind. This football team has impressed me the way they've continued to grow as a group, and I got a feeling they're on a mission, and they're going to come in there, they're going to take care of business on Saturday. Now, when it comes to the over-under at 51.5, the Wolfpack offense has kind of been in a funk. The Irish are going to have to carry the weight to get this 51.5. They're going to have to carry the load to get over that number. And if Notre Dame struggles and the Wolfpack plays some kind of defense, this number might be in peril as you get toward the end of it. I got a feeling it's going to be close, but I got a feeling this is going to hit the over a little bit. They're going to probably got 54 total points in this game, but it's going to be till the very end. You're going to be sitting there sweating it out. But I think they hit the over, but just barely, and Notre Dame's going to provide that finishing touch.
Yeah, Fresh, we're going to be talking so much about Sam Hartman, and you're right, leadership has gone a long way, especially what he's done making that transition to Notre Dame. They look like a different team. I was a little bit higher on them going into the season than you were, and I think that this was maybe one of the factors that I was kind of thinking about. Jaden Thomas and Mitchell Evans have been everything that Sam Hartman needs them to be. But in this game right now, I went back and I looked at what the Wolfpack defense did. NC State held UConn to 33% on third down, which is very impressive, especially with their defense. And that's the one thing that kind of can travel well. It's also one thing that when you go into Raleigh, that NC State defense can be very, very tough. But I don't think Sam Hartman's going to be the big name in this game. I think it's going to be Audric Esime. And the reason why I say it's going to be Esime in this game is due to the fact that NC State uncharacteristically was allowing 6.2 yards a carry to UConn. And usually NC State has a much better rush defense than what we are seeing. Now, Esime already has 210 yards on the season. He's got a couple of scores, and he's averaging 7.3 yards a carry. This kid is going to be leaned on heavily in this game because I think that's going to be how they're going to be able to soften up the NC State defense. You're right. Armstrong wasn't great. It's not what we thought we would see from him for NC State, but really it's going to fall back on the shoulders of Jordan Houston. We need to see more out of that running back. We need to see him be able to take some of the load off of Armstrong, because not only was it with Armstrong throwing the ball 26 times, he also ran the ball 19 times. Now, he had 96 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, which good for him. Congratulations, my man. But you can't, it's the same problem we see with time and time again. When the quarterback becomes too much of the offense, things get really, really scary. 7.5 seems like a lot for Notre Dame. And again, I think NC State's got the defense. I just don't know if they have the offense to, if Notre Dame gets up 2 or 3 scores, is NC State going to be able to score enough to make this close and for them to come back? If NC State wants to win this game, they got to play from ahead. They got to get some quick points early on, maybe force Notre Dame into a couple of quick 3-and-outs or get a turnover here and there. Notre Dame's done a really good job of protecting the football so far. Again, first 2 weeks of the season, competition has been the greatest. You're getting a much better competition now. We're going to know a lot about Notre Dame after week number 3 or week number 2 here, their third game. And we'll kind of get an idea of what kind of matchup we should expect in a couple of weeks against Ohio State. I like Notre Dame in this game. I don't know if I love the 7.5. I'm kind of right at that number for me. I'm at 7.5, 8 points. So I probably would, if I'm taking Notre Dame, I will take the points with them. Again, with you, that 51.5, man, I'm going to say I'll take the under on that one. I think it's going to be Notre Dame carrying most of that over-under. I could see maybe a 28-14 type of game, 28-17 type of game. I think it's going to be really difficult to get to that 51.5 right there. But maybe NC State surprises me. If NC State can, put up 21 points themselves, then I think that over is going to come in. So, because I really do believe, I'm pretty confident Notre Dame's win this football game. It's just the over-under is the one where I really start to struggle.
Well, Haps, before we move on, the one way NC State wins this ball game is if they wake up the echoes of Phillip Rivers, T.A. McClendon, Jericho Cotchery, Chuck Amato, aka Chuck the Chest. They've got to get that team, and I think that's actually probably the best NC State team ever. And I saw them actually ironically play in the Gator Bowl versus Notre Dame back in the day with my neighbors who are NC State grads. And when that team was loaded and they were dominating, that NC State fan base was rowdy. And if this team is going to pull out the upset on Saturday, they need to wake up those echoes, get those memories churning, be loud, and play at that level because that was a lethal offense. And if they do, then craziness in Raleigh all night long will be a heck of a weekend.
Absolutely. All right, Fresh. Third game of the week. This is the 3:30 kick on ABC. Texas A&M Aggies traveling to Miami. Texas A&M is a 4.5-point road favorite. A lot of road favorites this weekend. Kind of took me off guard there. Over-under is set at 51 points. Well, Tyler Van Dyke looked like he was a couple of years ago. 77% passing, 200 yards. Miami ran the football well. It was against Miami of Ohio, one of the better teams in the MAC as well. You know, they played defense 2 of 12 on first down or on third down. What are you seeing, man? Are you seeing Miami maybe having a shot in this game? Because I think a lot of people are going to take this, but a year ago, Texas A&M didn't even make a bowl game. So,
I mean, the first thing you look at is you see Jimbo Cristobal. It sounds like you're going to get something like a Jack in the Box or a Hardee's. And then you have Wegman
sounds
versus
like
Van
something
Dyke.
I get food poisoning.
That's probably also going to occur. Then you have Wegman and Van Dyke. I think it's just really come down to the two quarterbacks because there's tons of talent there, and the rest of the teams, we have no idea what we're going to get from anybody. Either the Hurricanes or Aggies. It's been both these squads are so up and down. They showed momentum at the end of the year last year, but do we actually believe? Do we believe in A&M? Do we believe in Miami? They get all these recruits, they bring in all these high rankings in December and early February, and then when the games are played, they lay duds. Do we believe in either of these teams? There's talent at quarterback. We've both seen it happen. We've never seen it consistent. That's what I'm really focused on this football game. If A&M loses, we're going to hear more about Bobby Petrino, not the good offensive coordinator, and Jimbo's doesn't have a good football team, and just a bunch of high recruits. And they buy players, and they never actually perform on the field. All those stories will keep running and running and running. And you look at Miami, if they get blown out or they come out clunking, Cristobal, does he even care about coaching Miami? Are the players actually paying attention? All these stories start rising up of these guys are supposed to be the saviors of these programs, and we haven't seen anything from either of them. There's tons of money flying around both these programs. It's been well documented, but where's the production on the field? Nobody cares about workout videos or showing what you're doing in NIL nonsense. They want to see results on the field. Last year's game between these two teams, they both came in, stumbled in. Miami looked completely outmatched, unathletic. No, they weren't physical. A&M actually looked impressive in that football game, and they went back actually after that retreated back to their hole for the next couple weeks after that. But I still come back to the fact of which one of you actually wants to prove that you're a legit football program. If you stumble through this game, I don't care who you are, offensive line play, defensive line play, you have recruits everywhere. If none of you guys show up, all your kids are hit the portal and go somewhere else, most likely Colorado. This is the time you've got to show up and you've got to put on a big game or you're just going to be a forgotten program. Especially with conference realignment, more teams are coming into these leagues. You're going to start falling farther and farther down that pecking order and getting less and less of the pie if you don't show up. So I'm actually intrigued to see which one of these teams is truly for real. You're both 1-0. This is a hot afternoon to be down South Florida. Can Miami show up and at least be competitive? Because I have not seen Miami be competitive in a long time. I've seen A&M be competitive. I've seen them upset Alabama. I've seen them play tough. I've seen them beat LSU. I have not seen Miami be competitive in a football game against a big opponent in a long time. Mario Cristobal, can you get the Hurricanes to play at, I'm not saying at a 2003 level or a 90s level or an 80s level. That we can't even ask for that. Just give us competitive football. Get the guys to actually play on the same team and be focused in a big football game. Because you know what? You lose this game, you're going to lose more games at the ACC. You're going to get destroyed when you go up to Tallahassee if you don't get your stuff turned around. you're becoming an embarrassment. This is your one football game to prove that you haven't gone anywhere. If you lose 17-14 and it's a tight football game and you both are competitive and actually is a good game that people can watch and see there's effort, I'll accept that you're in the right direction. If you come in, you get blown out and there's mistakes and you look sloppy and the guys look slow, adios, you're done. It's over. We've seen enough. Miami is just to become a forgotten school from back in the day. This is your one chance. Jimbo, you need to show up, get your guys to play because the SEC West is probably the toughest division in college football. And again, if you stink, you're going to be run out and you're going to be a forgotten program. And those fans, they only give you so much oil money. Eventually, they're going to use the oil money to run you out of town. Which one of these teams is going to show up? That's all I really want to focus on this football game. I don't care who's playing where, who wants to rise up and actually be a player. I think the Aggies will cover the 4.5. I think they find ways to win. They win by a touchdown. The over-under at 51. The Aggies have scored 20 points, at least 20 points in 4 of their last 5 games going back to 2022. And the Hurricanes have been only scored 30 or more in 2 of those last 4. So the offenses have been hit or miss, not exactly that powerful. I got a feeling the Aggies, if they're gonna hit the over, they're gonna have to carry the weight in this football game and get it done. But I think the over hits, but just barely.
Yeah, Fresh. This is a fascinating game for me here because I was looking at A&M, and you took a look at Connor Weigman, what he did last week, and was pretty impressive at 236, 5 touchdowns, and a quiet 5 touchdowns because he didn't get any of the hype on the statistical talk shows afterwards. Sophomores Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas look like some absolute ballers out there on the outside. Both are sophomores. Thomas is 6'6". He's a huge target for Connor out there. But I started thinking, and I started looking at this. Fresh, when I was in high school, it's when I started really learning about football. And, I had different people teach you about football. And when I was working at a marina, I had a former boss who his name was Tom, who would teach me about, he played football in the 80s and how anything that they need to do was smash mouth football. And if you really wanted to control a football game, he taught me about how controlling the line of scrimmage, kind of hitting people in the mouth right up the middle, especially running a fullback or running a halfback who can pound it in between the tackles. And you look at what Henry Parrish and Mark Fletcher did for Miami this past week, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns between the two of them. They ran very, very well. That's what Miami needs to do in this game. We need to go back because Miami, you're right. We have not seen them play competitive football in a very long time. It's been a bit. Miami, you need to start embracing your roots. Willis McGahee, Egrin James, guys who can run in between the tackles, who can pop it out. You maybe have a guy who can pop it outside, break a long one off tackle, but can you run it in between the tackles? Can you smash someone in the face when you're running up the middle? Yeah, you may get 3 yards a carry, but you hit them hard, and those 3 yards eventually it's like chopping a tree down. Yeah, you make that first chop and you only get 3 yards, and you make another chop and you get 3 yards. But sooner or later, those 3-yard carries start turning into 4, 5, 6-yard gains there, and you're running right into the teeth of the defense. A&M only had 2 sacks. They had 10 tackles for a loss in their game. They are going to need more pressure. If Van Dyke is going to do this, if he's going to use play action, can they get after Van Dyke? If they can do that, they're going to win this football game. If they can withstand the run, they're going to win this football game. I'm going to believe in Miami this year. We've had two road favorites. I'm going to say Miami at least will cover this spread. I'm not super confident about that one, but I'm going to go with it because I'm going to give Miami and say that maybe it took 2 years for Mario Cristobal to pull this thing together. Maybe he had to get his players. Maybe he had to have a sense of pride because Miami needs to win this game. Cristobal needs to win this game. If Cristobal doesn't win this game this weekend, I don't know whose seat's starting to get hotter. Because you take a look at what's going on, Brown up there in West Virginia, his seat's burning up. Billy Napier, in Gainesville. His seat's starting to cook a little bit too. Cristobal, you need this game. Now, you're not going to get fired for this game. You're not going to be technically on the hot seat. But the temperature is going to turn up just a bit because you don't have this game. By having a game like this is the type of the game that your boosters start going, we beat A&M. We beat an SEC team. We now have the momentum on our side. Miami, listen, after Clemson's loss last week, ACC is open. They need to be the team that can knock off Florida State and possibly keep Florida State out of the playoff. If you're going to do it, it's going to start this week. I'm going to take Miami as the dog. I'm excited just because I think that it's almost a little bit of desperation time for them. And when the Hurricane gets desperate, man, you better watch out. That over under 51, I like that number too. But I'm with you. I'm going to go on the under on that one as well. I don't think there's going to be enough points spent or scored in that game. So guess what? Smash mouth old school football, just like Tom taught me back in the day in Vermillion, Ohio. I'm going Miami and the under in this game.
I tell you, if Miami's good, it just makes college football better. And that's where you they're that bad boy, they're that villain that everybody loves. And
Yeah.
when they stink, it loses that extra little zest. I think they need to be competitive and good to add that little extra bad boy mentality to the game.
Right. And it was pass interference in 2002. All right, Fresh, let's go to the game of the week. This was voted on you by the fans. Hey, if you're not following us on social media, make sure you do that. Follow us on Twitter each and every weekend. We put up a game of the week. Let the fans decide what game we're going to talk about. And overwhelming, maybe it was because we put the poll out on Saturday and everyone got to watch this team win a really exciting game. But we got the Nebraska Cornhuskers traveling to Colorado. This is a noon kick on Fox. Colorado is a 3.5-point home favorite. Over under is set at 57.5 points. Fresh, I'll turn it over to you, buddy.
Well, first off, Vegas, this is for you. Both these games were on national television last week. Nebraska went to Minnesota. Colorado went to TCU. You're only making Colorado a 3.5-point favorite. Nebraska's only touchdown came off of a botched trick play that caused the receiver to be wide open back of the end zone. They were awful on offense. Awful. It was not good defense being played between the Gophers and the Cornhuskers. It was two terrible offenses, and the Gophers actually just survived because Nebraska, they choked. And you're only saying Colorado after what they did to TCU and that electric offense of those playmakers, only a 3.5-point favorite at home? Come on. I know it's a 10 a.m. kick local, but from what just the pure eye test, Colorado they're going to win by 2 touchdowns over Nebraska. Nebraska has no chance. That offense looked pathetic. That defense was hanging on for dear life. If they played any better offense, it would have been a much worse football game. This is the home opener for Prime. That place is going to be rowdy and packed. Coming off all this excitement, you tell this team is not going to be ready to fire up to play and go beat Nebraska and be 2-0. Colorado is going to run roughshod over the Cornhuskers. And the Matt Rule era is going to look just like the Scott Frost era. Very chilly and lacking W's. This is going to be ugly. It's a 10 a.m. local kick, and I got a feeling it's going to be, you would have thought it's an 8 o'clock p.m. kick. It's going to be, well, it's not going to be eggs and kegs. It's more like recreational materials and kegs because it's Boulder, Colorado, and they love to experiment on certain, shrubbery. But it's going to be a very festive environment, and that Colorado team is going to feed off that energy, and they're going to go in there and whoop the tail out of Nebraska. Someone posted it today on social media that you could have gone to every Colorado home game last year and spent $222 combined. The cheapest ticket to get in on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning is $470 right now, and it's going in skyrocketing for one football game, and that's what Dion has done for this Colorado program. His son put on a show. Travis Hunter put on a show. Edwards put on a show. His swagger, his confidence, the team is just thriving off of it. They are feeding off of it. They're playing at that level. It's not just taking Colorado by storm, it has taken the nation by storm. People are watching, people are talking about Colorado football when it's week one of the NFL and Colorado football and Dion are getting interview time all over the spectrum. He has changed the game. And you're going to tell me that right now Nebraska's going to keep this within 4 points? No way. They are going to beat the trash out of Nebraska. Matt Rule, button down the hatches, buddy. You're going to hear it on the message boards. But this is all going to be Colorado, and it's going to be Colorado big time. You said it's 59.5. Now, we've talked about who's going to carry the weight.
57.5.
57.5. I saw 59 earlier. Nebraska's, they might get a touch. They might get 14 points. Colorado's going to do the heavy lifting, and the over is still going to hit. So pound it away. They're covering the spread. The over is going to hit. Buffalo's all day. Prime time is taking over college football. And if you aren't treating your players right, or if there's rumblings and lack of playing time, kids will hit the portal in a heartbeat, and they will go to Boulder. And this is going to be a whole new regime. Watch out, Big 12 next year. This is for real, folks.
So I tried not to get caught up in the hype, Fresh. I tried to keep this like I attack every single game. You're right. How much money is going to be hammered on Colorado in that 3.5? But Vegas, 9 times out of 10, they get the number pretty close, and they're pretty right. This may be one out of 10 times that they're dead wrong. But so then I started looking at the games. I started looking at Nebraska, started looking at Colorado, and seeing where it was at. Well, yeah, Nebraska's offense was pretty inept. They did a really good job of holding Minnesota only 55 yards rushing in their game. Nebraska has got a shot at this thing for one reason only. TCU ran for 262 yards on Colorado. Everyone wants to point out, like, Sanders, amazing game, completed over 80% of his passes. Travis Hunter looked like a beast playing. I think he played almost every snap, it felt like. Dylan Edwards, I love that kid. That kid's phenomenal. He's going to be one of the most exciting players in the next couple of years. If not this year, he'd probably be the best freshman in the country, but he may be one of the most exciting players to watch over the next 2 or 3 years. But Nebraska is able to run the football. They do have Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims is talented, and they are going to need a lot from Anthony Grant, the running back there. But here's how you can beat Colorado, is if you can keep Colorado's offense off the field. If Nebraska is able to run the football, especially, and that's where Colorado does have a weak spot, their defensive line up front. You saw them get pushed around. You saw them being able to be run against in that game. And you can maybe open up. Listen, Hunter is a heck of a defensive back, and he's going to lock down one side. I don't think Sims is going to throw the ball. And he can't throw 3 interceptions in this game like he did last week. But Nebraska's got a shot if they stick to again, you got to go a little old school. Run the ball 40, 50, 55 times a game. And keep pounding it down Colorado's throat. You're going to win the time of possession, and you're going to eat up a lot of those long drives to keep that offense off the field. That's the only way they're going to do this. You're going to need to limit the amount of times Colorado's offense touch the football. If you can do that, if you can limit them to saying that they only get 7 drives in the game for some reason. Again, that's pretty extreme. Like, I'm talking about, quite a bit. All of a sudden, this game gets really, really interesting to me. Again, Fresh, I'm with you. I think Colorado wins this game. I think they cover the spread because I don't know if Nebraska can score 30 plus. Heck, I might give the ball to Colorado 7 times and they get 7 touchdowns and they got 49 points. I don't think Nebraska's offense is to the point where they can keep up with Colorado. But if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to win this game ugly. They're going to have to force Sanders into mistakes. They're going to have to really embrace that black shirt defense that we used to hear all about back in the day. That's the only way Nebraska is going to win. It's going to have to be on the defensive side of the football, and it's going to have to run the football. Don't try to throw it around. Limit your passing attempts. I don't want to say you want to embrace like the triple option here, but I'm saying that you're going to need to really pound the rock in this game. I got Colorado winning with the 3.5. I'm going to probably take the under because I hope Matt Rule is smarter than I am and can kind of see the same thing. I think this game is going to get really quick, very fast. I think they're going to keep it on the ground and eat up a lot of time of possession. That's why I'm taking the under in this 57.5. If there's a way where Nebraska starts thinking, getting cute and throwing the ball all over the field, yeah, that over's coming in real easy.
That the pressure I think is really on that Nebraska defense and the depth of that defense because they're
Right.
going to if they're out there running all over the field. That first team might be good. That first 11, you start looking at that second, and that third on the depth chart. If they aren't talented enough, that's where the breaks are going to start happening, and the game could get out of hand real quick.
Right. The only thing I think is if you could get you get Colorado off the field. If you then eat like a 7-minute game clock drive where you get that defense allowed to really let that defense rest up, then all of a sudden you keep them fresh all game long and really allow them to pin their ears back. But I think you're right still. I got Colorado winning this one. I still do have them covering that 3.5 because that for some reason feels too juicy to kind of pass up. I'm with you on that one, Fresh. I would be hammering that one. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our game of the week. It's a rematch from last year. One of the best games in week number 2 last year. 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Texas Longhorns will travel to Alabama and Tuscaloosa to face the Crimson Tide. At the time of record, Crimson Tide are a 7-point favorite in this game. Over under at 56 points. This is a big time game for both teams. Both teams need this win. Texas needs this win to show off that they are truly back, that their Longhorns need to be taken seriously. If they lose this game, it's going to be, great. You're going to be able to win the Big 12. You have a lot of talent there, but you're not ready next year for the SEC. Alabama needs this game. You lose to Texas, it's not going to take you out of the playoff race, but it's very early on for Nick Saban to start taking L's here. Fresh, I'm excited for Jalen Milroe. Roydell Williams needs to be a little bit better. Jace McClendon looked okay, but I feel like he needs to be a little bit better. This is a game. Is Alabama's defense, though, is where I'm going to have the question. Alabama's defense, guys, it goes without saying, it's going to be a really good defense. A really, really good defense. A defense that 98% of the teams across the country will take. But is it a really, really good defense, or is it the championship elite level defense that we've gotten used to having in Tuscaloosa? Fresh, I'll turn it over to you. How are you seeing Texas versus Alabama?
Well, first off, Seth, Texas and Alabama have been playing college football for a long time, right?
Right.
This is the first time ever that these two schools have met in the regular season and both teams are ranked. And they've played quite a few times. This is also Quinn Ewers' first true road game. I'm not saying a trip to TCU is a real road game or a trip to Baylor or a trip to Kansas or Kansas State. No disrespect to those programs, but that's not Bryant-Denny Stadium. Those pale in comparison to the environment he's walking into. He didn't get any playing time when he was at Ohio State on any big road games. He hasn't done it at Texas yet. The biggest environment was either at Texas at a home game or playing in the Red River Shootout. This is going to be a whole nother test for him, and that probably for most of the football team. If anyone was around 2 years ago when they went to Arkansas, that was a big road game, but still not the same as what they're walking into on Saturday night. How does he manage the noise, the distractions, the whatever intimidations Alabama fans might bring, and keep focused on the task at hand and winning the game and keeping the down and distance manageable? That's what I want to see. If Quinn Ewers could do that, it'll show that he's truly matured as a quarterback, because we've seen him put up tons of stats at home, and they had laid a clunker in the bowl game, but going into Bryant-Denny, can he manage his emotions and be focused? Can Steve Sarkisian be focused in this environment? The last time he was in that stadium, he was coaching Mac Jones in that 2020 offense and putting up tons of points. How does he manage his emotions and be able to manage his team's expectations to be successful on Saturday? Those two guys are the key to the Longhorns. Now, you mentioned the secondary in the Alabama defense. At time of record, that Alabama defensive secondary has a few guys who are a little dinged up. There's no reports of who's out or who's playing, but there's reports that there's a bunch of guys who have some nicks and some dings. And are they going to be truly healthy to run and play a full game? It's going to really count on freshman Caleb Downs and Kool-Aid McKinstry. The two of them, I think, are fully fine, but they're going to have to pick up the slack for other guys who may be new to the rotation or other guys who might not be playing 100%. How do they adapt and play at a high level to shut down this high-level passing attack? Because they're going to have to go against Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, and A.D. Mitchell. That's a pretty good list of playmakers that Texas is bringing in with a pretty quality quarterback. Can that secondary and that back end, can they play in space? Can they shut down? Can they match up? Can they get off the field? Can the linebackers cover some backs in space? How does Alabama defense show up in their first true test? They lost a lot. Will Anderson's not there to save the day. Dallas Turner, you've got to show up now as the big man. You've got to start making plays. This is going to come on that defense. Are you ready to accept that challenge? This is going to be something right now on Nick Saban, changing coordinators. How have you prepared and got these guys ready to play? Where's the depth of this Alabama defense? If they recruit really well, they bring in kids in the portal. Nick Saban is a genius. Can he put it all together, get these guys to be prepared to play in this football game? They looked great versus Middle Tennessee State last week. How does that transition to Saturday night? On the other side of the football for Alabama, Milroe. There was a quarterback battle all year long, all summer, off season long. He's the first Alabama quarterback ever to throw 3 touchdowns and run for 2 in a game. Let that sink in, folks. There's a tons of kids. Joe Namath out the top back in the day. He didn't even do it. Milroe did this. The kid has mobility. If he plays with confidence and playmakers show up for him, he has a chance. He had some confidence issues last year. It came a little too fast. He was put on the field way too fast because of Bryant, because of Young's injuries. So he's thrust into the situation. Now he's had a whole offseason to prepare. Can he continue to grow and become a better quarterback and understand how to distribute to the running backs, receivers, tight ends, and manage the offense and use his athletic ability? If he can and get comfortable that way, he could actually blossom and to become a much better player than we all thought we saw last year, where he kind of looked a little lost. He's grown. I think they coached him up. How does he play with the big lights now? I want to see how that happens on Saturday night. One of the other factors we're really talking about is that last season, this game was played at 11 a.m. local time in about 1,000 degrees in Austin, Texas on Fox. It was hot as heck. Players were exhausted. There was cramps. They were worn out. This game's at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central time. It's going to be a little cooler, not 95,000 degrees. That's going to be a little extra factor of who's going to be more hydrated, but not with the sun beating down on you. That home field advantage they had in Austin is now being flipped to being a night game in Bryant-Denny. And how does that change the narrative in this football game? Because Texas played their butts off last year, and they should have had the upset if it wasn't for Quinn Ewers getting knocked out. They got lucky. They owned the line of scrimmage. That's one of the rare times you can say that an opponent has ruled the line of scrimmage against Alabama. But everyone wore down. Will Anderson took over, and Bryce Young was able to scramble around and get it done late in the fourth quarter and find a way to win. How does Texas respond when you don't have that extra momentum on your side for being at home? How do you adapt and take it to Alabama on the road and become that road warrior football team? If you want to be a playoff team, if you want to be a conference champion team, if you want to go and try to compete, this is your first test. If you could do this, you've shown you're there. If not, you're just another team that was back or may be back or could be back. This is your chance to be back by beating Alabama and beating them in their own house. So it's one thing about if you upset them in Austin, there's nothing going to Bryant-Denny and getting the W. You have the squad. You've recruited at a high level. Can you actually put the pen to paper and get it done on Saturday night? I've gone back and forth on this game for like 2.5 days, maybe even 2.5 months, all offseason. I don't know who's going to win. I do know that with that over-under being at 56, that is going to be in danger. And actually, I feel much more comfortable taking the under because I think both defenses are going to play at a high level. And with that, I'm going to say we're going to take the under. It's not hitting 56 points. This is going to be an old school, slug it out defensive football game. And whichever quarterback makes the first mistake might make the only mistake and cost themselves a win. With that said, Nick Saban, I'm not betting against him. I can't bet against him. I can't bet against Bryant Denny. I can't bet against the night game there. It's just too much. I think Alabama wins 24-20. It's going to be a classic, but Nick Saban's going to show that Alabama has not left and they are still here to be reckoned.
Fresh, I'm with you on that one. I'm not picking against Saban. Texas, you have to prove it to me. You have to prove it to me. And it's not to knock any of your players. It's not to say anything that you're not talented. It's not saying that you don't have the talent to match up with Alabama. I think you do. You have a lot of really good players on that team. I'm intrigued to see how Alabama handles Davion Sanders there, the tight end. I think he creates a huge matchup advantage for the Longhorns in this game. If I expect him to have a really, really big game with him and Ewers. I think Ewers will find him a few times, probably maybe a score or two out of him. Xavier Worthy looked real good last week versus Rice. And the same thing, watch out for sophomore Ethan Burke. Had a huge game versus Rice, the defensive end. If he can get after Milroe, then I think Texas really got a shot at this. But you're right. You went back to Fresh. You talked about Kool-Aid. You talked about Dallas Turner. Alabama's defensive stars need to play like stars. They need to play like superstars. They need to take over this game. That 7 number is where I'm struggling with. I'm picking Alabama to win this game. If that spread was 6.5, I might be willing to take it at the 7. I think the 7 number is like right where it's going to be. I got Alabama at like a 27-20 game as well. I think the under is going to come in. I really would rather stay under that 56 number. But I got Alabama winning this game. I think Texas needs to win this game, and that's what makes them really, really dangerous. And if they can go into Bryant Denny and pull off this upset, and it's going to be a huge upset, and no matter what happens in the Nebraska-Colorado game with what we've been talking about and all week long with Coach Prime and everything, can you imagine, like, NFL be damned? Like, there's not going to be like a week 1 in the NFL if Texas upsets Alabama in Alabama. Like, the whole world starts talking about Texas. They say everything is bigger in Texas, and that's going to mean media coverage as well, because that will be the talk of the town going into Monday morning. You're going to need a really special opening NFL weekend for that talk to dwarf what the talk would be like if Texas pulls off the upset. I'm not saying it's happening. I give them about 35% chance to win this football game. I got the Tide just because I'm going with Nick Saban, and it's very difficult for one of Saban's assistants to beat him. Doesn't happen very often. So I'm going Alabama, but I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be really, really tight this week.
It kind of feels like, the Florida State LSU game where we want to see Florida State prove it. Like we had seen the hype, but
Right.
prove it. And they came out and they proved it. Now it's kind of, all right, Texas, your chance. There's a lot of hype. There always is. Prove it. This is the biggest stage. This isn't beating Rice. This is not beating Houston. It's not beating Baylor. This is beating Alabama at Alabama. If you could do that, then people will believe that you are on the track to being back. So there's a lot more hanging in the balance here. And, I don't have Alabama covering. I got a feeling this is still going to be a clunker. And it's funny where, good teams, win, great teams cover. That might be an onus there where Alabama might actually win, but they might not cover.
Yeah. All right, folks, that's our week 3 preview for this week. So, guys, make sure you're checking out spinnablesports.com because the Irrational Confidence podcast is part of spinnablesports.com. There's previews. If you're an NFL fan, all of the previews for each division is up and ready to go on Spinnable Sports. There's a bunch of great articles. We want to send a special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, whether it's Good Pods, Amazon, Apple Pods, I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Leave us that 5-star review because you guys know we're those 5-star prospects. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Listen every single time we got a new episode coming out. Leave us a comment. Heck, we had people asking us to cover tennis from Mexico last week. Maybe. I don't know much about tennis in Mexico, but we'll see what we can find out for you. Maybe we'll get them on the show next week. I don't know who's a big star in
I mean,
tennis in Mexico.
if you win a set, do you take a shot at tequila? If that's the thing, I can get behind that kind of game.
Yeah, I could talk lucha libre wrestling at some point, but that's about all. Maybe that's what makes tennis interesting in Mexico. They wear luchador masks. I don't know. It was a comment. It's a suggestion. Maybe we'll do it. Who knows? But this has now been a great episode, guys. I can't wait for week 2. It's going to be so much fun. We got a lot of great games out there. So make sure you join the ride with us all season long. That's all I got to say.
Well, folks, have another great college football week 2. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye, y'all.